It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Now, you can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting if you reach out to me through my email at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, really excited about our guest today. This is one of those guests that we start talking and we talk off the air for hours and hours and hours before we ever get to begin recording. Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD. And you can find him using that name, Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD, on YouTube. He's the head of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party. And you can find them at therevolutionaryblackpantherparty.org. I met him through John Potash, our older friend. He's been around with us here for probably 12 years. John Potash just came out with that brand new film called CIA Drugs Are Us. And you could find me in that film. I have a very small part in that film toward the end. Many people say it's the best part of the film. Dr. Ali Muhammad, you could find him on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube under Ali O. Muhammad. You want to meet him in person, go to Oakland, California, the second week of April 2025. It's called MAGA and Oligarchy Against the People. And it's supposed to be at Merritt College, but there could be some last-minute changes, so check out his Instagram and his website and all that kind of stuff there, too. Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD, are you there, sir?
Yes. Appreciate you. Definitely, as you, have spoke to the audience about we can go on and on and on. It's like that. Whenever you have, I guess not to brag or boast, but whenever you have great minds that come together, you do get that. So I appreciate that most definitely. And yes, I'll be in Oakland. Should be the second week of April at Merritt College, which is also known as home of the Panther Party. This is the actual college where the 10-point program and platform was put together, and it's a deep dynamic. So definitely looking forward to that. And thank you for having me on.
No, thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed talking to you off the air too. And I promise you, I know off the air I interrupt and I do a lot of talking, but on the air, this is your show. You're the guest. Tell us about yourself, though. Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD, you were born in Kenya, but you went to college in Libya. Tell us about that part of your life.
Yeah, in Ethiopia. Well, basically, my parents, were very, how would I say, intense people in a positive way. Both being Marxist Leninists and basically scientific socialists. And they raised us, on those principles. And they both also being Panthers of the 60s and 70s through the 80s. And so, with having parents, like that, there's certain things that are ingrained in you, aka you then growing up as a cub, you can say Panther cub in that context. So in essence, I graduated at the age of 14, and I had two places of interest through my parents and through other channels to go for schooling. One thing is that most people don't know Cuba actually provides free medical school, if you obligate yourself once you're finished, to give free medical aid and support. But there's a age limitation. Meaning that I think it's like between age of 16 and 25. After that, you can't go. And Libya at the time offered. So I had a choice, I was able to go to Cuba, throughout the summer, to really see if that is where I wanted to go. And Libya was the ultimate choice and decision, and very beautiful experience, and honestly, really being able to understand and appreciate the environment, the people, and, just how Libya was structured. It was a very beautiful experience, very, very much so. And most people don't know how great of an example Libya, is and was, prior to the assassination of, great revolutionary Gaddafi. But in dealing with that, I learned a lot. It was there that I got my medical degree in internal medicine, neurology, and it really set a tone, for my life, just my experience, especially being, at such a young age, but in an environment that was conducive to my growth and development. Ultimately, as today, I practice as a psychologist. I specialize in trauma and PTSD. Also insomnia, addiction, anxiety, and depression, and also have a background in child psychology and family as well. And so that's my professional and academic life and background. As a revolutionary and an activist and a person of the people, I'm currently the national leader of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party. Of course, we deem ourselves the same party of the 1960s, just updated today to deal with today's struggle. We stand on the same 10 points, of course, with modernity, but we also have what I coin and develop as the 5 principles of life, and that is to feed, clothe, shelter, train, and defend. So in that juncture, this is our current platform, ideology, and philosophy. Feed, clothe, shelter, train, defend, as is our mission, which I coin as Lowen collectivism, us feeding, clothing, sheltering, training, and defending in order to bring into existence a higher level of that, which is self-sufficiency with unlimited resources, what the people can do for self. And I feel that, a lot of times we get confused. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to how to deal with what's going on. I was actually on a podcast last week, the week before last, was it? On a Tuesday. And they were saying, it seems like you all aren't about revolution anymore. It's like you just, have subordinate yourself to these social programs. And, that was a argument, a very dialectical, debative argument in the 60s and 70s culture. So I had to explain, if you don't understand that food is a form of warfare, poverty indeed is, the lack of clothing, habitation, training and skills and ability to protect and defend yourself. If you don't understand that all those things are forms of warfare against people, then you clearly wouldn't understand, how revolutionary it is to be able to provide and serve the people. It was Kissinger in 1974 who came up with NSSM number 200. When they came up with NSSM number 200, he made it clear. He said, war, firing bullets at people have been successful in population stabilization. However, if we are able to limit, control, and even manipulate the food of the people, then we're able to reduce population better. And that's when a lot of this, manipulation and perversion of food even got into the context. Excuse me. This is why, not to get off topic, we also have to be very, very serious about what we put in our bodies because, a lot of that stuff, even some of those preservatives that are the ones that are necessary are so harmful to us. But not to get off topic or digress, but my point of saying that is that this is why we stand on these principles to feed, clothe, shelter, train, and defend the people. Because if you don't have these things, then you will cease to exist. Like if the grid shut down tomorrow, you're going to need food, clothing, shelter, skills and training, and the ability to protect and defend yourself. That's going to always be needed. And when we understand it on that level, especially on a scientific level and empirical level, we'll get it. So that's our mission. Our overall mission, ideology, philosophy, and platform right now is to feed, clothe, shelter, train, defend our people, to develop a level of self-sufficiency. So with that, we got 40 chapters nationwide, 15 international chapters. Our international headquarters is in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And we have chapters. We have a chapter in Germany. We have a chapter in France. We have a chapter in Reunion Island, which is off the continent of Africa. And we have chapter in Ghana, Nigeria, in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, and Jamaica, and quite a few places around the world. And at our fully operational chapters, we have domestic violence prevention classes, couples counseling, drug treatment, drug prevention, prenatal, postnatal care, child care, aftercare, 7-day-a-week food programs at fully operational chapters, and housing programs and certification and employment placement programs that we do offer, and reacclimation programs for those who are, just newly free incarcerated, people who were previously incarcerated.
Yeah, first I want to say, don't worry about this. You keep saying, well, I don't want to get too far off topic. Don't worry about that. And first of all, I'd love to have you come back many, many times, as many times as John Potash comes back.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're on the same beat here. But back to back up just a little bit. How does your medical education differ from like an American medical? Like if I were to see you as a doctor, as opposed to like right now, I got a whole list of. I just got medical insurance. I got a whole list of doctors I'm seeing, cardiac and all kind of stuff, dude. Okay. So how would your treatment, if I would have come to see you and your philosophy, differ from the treatment I would see at Bay Care down here in the Tampa Bay area?
Well, one thing that I have learned in the difference is that, I feel that America, unfortunately, the American Medical Association, they're gonna flag this podcast, and Big Pharma, these are industrial complexes. So the first problem is that I'm going to get to fully answering that. I just want to say this first. The first issue is that when you have things established as a bureaucracy and you're in a system that is capitalistic, meaning that where profit value is over human value, I feel it's always difficult to get the proper health and the proper support that you need. So what I have witnessed and seen from my own experience and from my own personal training and medical background and medical school background, and my labs background, all these different things that I've done with medicine and how I see things carry out in America, wherein I differ, I believe in healing. I know that this dynamic and philosophy of treatment and this dynamic and philosophy of practice, I think it contradicts even the oath that's taken, right? So my approach is a little different. Like if you came to me, let's say that you have, an issue that I am, proficient in, let's say with internal medicine. So you came to me, you said, listen, I have, some heart issues. I have, let's say, or you have some, it could be pulmonology. You have lung issues, whatever your issue is, and I'm helping you. My approach is always for an intent to heal and an intention that will be more holistic and conducive to you versus immediately thinking of giving you some drugs, in that particular type of way. So I think my approach is healing and you not going through the extremities of pharmaceuticals versus what I've experienced and witnessed of how doctors do act in America, where it seems like everything is about drugs and nothing is about, I'm not going to knock and say every doctor's that way, but from what I see with the westernized and Americanized way of schooling and practice, that, you end up going there for, for see a cardiologist, and then by the end of the day, you're seeing a urologist. And doesn't mean you have that issue, I'm saying, but my point is that it's like, I've witnessed where it seems like it's business, like it's an upsell. Yeah. You get one prescription, and by you get one prescription in June, and by the time December comes, you got like 12 bottles. And they talk about drug pushers and drug dealers in the street, but I think a lot of these doctors are the biggest drug dealers on the block, and I think that's wherein that differs. I believe in a holistic approach, but there is a time and place where pharmaceuticals do have, their needs. I won't be ignorant to that, be scientific with it. However, I also feel that if I'm in a situation where you have to take, certain pharmaceuticals, I also believe in you flushing it out at one point where we get things to where they need to be, and you continuing from a holistic perspective.
Well, I got to tell you, I was just diagnosed with an enlarged heart. and I was given some medication, and within days, man, I feel so much better.
That's good. Well, that's good.
Yeah. But now, what about like with your practice, medical insurance? Would my normal medical insurance be able to cover my treatments with you and your services?
Well, see, being that I that's not what I fully work in my occupation today. For psychology, yes,
okay.
it would. But as far as those services are concerned, we would have to come up with some type of arrangement. I would say, yeah, we would have to do that.
Okay, but I don't want to monopolize this with my getting free medical advice from my new friend here, Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD. I don't want to abuse the privilege here, although you've been so kind to me off the air with all your help and advice.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you would discuss, we were discussing in the notes, is the Armed People Human Rights Movement. Okay.
Yeah.
And I noticed from looking at the article there in Covert Action Magazine, which was authored by it was an interview by John Potash, called U.S. Intelligence Covert War on Blacks Targeted Activists, Rappers, and Transforming Gangs in Chicago, with the head of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party, which is you. So some of it seems that you do armed marches. Am I correct?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
A couple of things. It now, in my experience, is that the arms dealerships, these gun stores, when you go in there, they seem to be almost entirely, from my experience, run by ex-cops, bunch of white guys that aren't so friendly. Like I wouldn't go in there and start discussing my politics with them. I'd probably get one of those red hats, and put one of those on and go walking in there. How do you and your friends manage this?
What you just said is because let me tell you about. So there was a time when I got just about every particular type of certification you could think of with the NRA, right?
Okay.
Therefore, yeah. So I did it because of those same reasons. It was difficult for a lot of people of color to get concealed weapons permits, to have certain type of training. Even in Florida, I was living in Florida at the time, Class G security licenses, right?
Right.
They were difficult. So you had to be a Class K instructor and NRA certified. So my thing is that I remember one time when I went to get start my NRA pistol instructor, rifle instructor. I did pistol, rifle at that time, pistol, rifle, and with a shotgun, and reloading. It was in Amila Island, and let me tell you how this was. When you say that, right? It were people who they weren't law enforcement, but they were like these like extremists, right wing. At that time, what was that? It was it post Obama? It was immediately after, so like 2009, and it was these like Tea Party type people and all of that, and it was like in the middle of nowhere. So, and I was the only dark face in there, and I guess they were looking at me thinking he's either crazy or he's some agent. That's how they were looking at me, and then when they saw how I was shooting, it was like, where did you learn to shoot like that from, right? But my point, not to digress, is that, yes, you're right. When you go in these stores, they're usually, if they're not former law enforcement, they're like these
wannabes
type of people. Yeah, wannabe, and sometimes they're worse. They're like, the wannabes are like the George Zimmerman kind of people, where they just go extra. And so it's like that. So you have those types, and yeah, they make it difficult. You go in there, and they're going to put you through the whole process. So you have to make sure that you have all your I's, your T's crossed, your T's crossed and your I's dotted, because yeah, they do try to be intimidating. I remember one time I was buying this Glock. It was a Glock 40 to 27, which is the subcompact. And everything, I already did my background check, but you just had to do the wait period in Florida. That was before I had a CWP in Florida, and everything was cool. They said, guys that come back, pick it up, your background is clear. So when I went to pick it up, the other guy, like, intentionally did this. It was on the weekend. The second background, I was supposed to come Friday. I think I wasn't able to come until like Saturday or Sunday, but he knew they weren't going to answer the phone, and he's like, oh, you can't get it. And then I came back like later the next week on a Tuesday, and I picked it up. But my point is that, yeah, they treat you very harsh. And we know how gun laws in America are. We know that, that the only gun laws existed in the 17 and 1800s were against, slaves, African slaves owning fire, having any type of weapon in their possession. Couldn't even be knives or some type of sword, or even if a stick looked funny. So we knew that gun laws are made to keep, slaves unarmed. And then after that, the same process where it was always weaponized against, targeted groups. And then when they went with the Gun Control Act, Dodd actually took a page from Hitler's Gun Control Act, and because that's what he did as well. So it's a funny thing because we know that when you start talking about guns, it seems like you're on this right wing, whatever initiative and agenda. But when you truly understand that we do have a human right to protect and defend ourselves, even international law substantiates that we do, we just have to be clear on where we are and where we stand, and the sensibility, with it all. For example, like I said, the Gun Control Act was utilized and weaponized against certain targeted groups. This is during the time they started to weaponize the felony status and use certain things that, eventually became, felonies that traditionally may not have been. Like, for example, Richard Nixon, with the war on drugs, we know that John Ehrlichman, his top advisor, came out, who was one of the people who drafted it and who put it all together and put it out there, made it clear. He said the war on drugs, that was just a euphemism. It was more or less a dog whistle, but it was really aimed against black people, black leaders, the black community, and the anti-war left, that particular white community. It was against activists so that they could actually raid our meetings, arrest our leaders, and target us. And he said, did we know it was wrong? Yes. He said, you couldn't just say that you were targeting black people and radical, anti-war people. You would have to, say something else. So we know that it was used to target activists and revolutionaries and black people, but not to digress and get off topic. So we know that when it comes to firearms, it's like a funny thing, because when the right-wing community creates certain laws, we know what the ideas are. Like when they create the stand your ground laws, we know how that's weaponized, used, and abused. We know that it's weaponized, used, and abused. Even certain laws that were made in Florida but challenged. Like I remember when DeSantis had made that law, if somebody's protesting, you can run them over. That right. Craziness. Yeah, and let me tell you what's insane. So one time, this was in St. Louis. We had a leader of our local chapter. We use the term general today. It's the same equivalent as the chairman. His name in the party was General Hudari Jelani, also known as Angelo Brown. And he was a veteran in law school. And he was one of the people who at first helped to put on the Ferguson rebellion with Darren Seals. Anyways, he was targeted for a couple weeks. They were ripping his flyers up, and the police there in St. Louis was targeting him very much so. So we made sure he had extra security. So he had met this young lady, so he didn't have the security around him, just met her. He went to East St. Louis, which is really Illinois, not Missouri. And all we know, I got a call from someone. I think I was in the middle of like a membership orientation. It was like, we think General Hudari is dead. And so I corresponded with his mother, and she said, yeah. So the story went, the police did a story, drunk man got killed, shootout with police. Then you can look him up. His name is Angelo Brown. You could just put Angelo Brown, Revolutionary Black Panther Party, and it'll probably come up what happened. But anyways, long story short, so, we went through and did all type of different investigations, got video, recordings and all of that. And here's what really happened. They claimed that it was a call of domestic violence. They went to the door and he opened fire on him. That's not what happened. What they did is they went to the door, they took him to the back of the building and shot him point blank in the side of his head. And that was our leader in St. Louis. But the point I'm making with saying this, so we went there to deal with a couple of different things. So I do human rights tribunals, which is where we gather information on injustice and human rights violations, and we still send these things over to the International Criminal Court, and we send it over to different structures in the UN. And even though we know how with the Rome status, and I'm not going to get in, that's another topic for another time, where the U.S. is with all of that. But my point is that, so we do that. So, but we also do an armed march. So during the armed march in St. Louis, that happened to us. Somebody came with a black Hummer, and they tried to run into us. So, I gave the person a warning. I said, if you do that again, we'll open fire on you. And this is a black guy driving it. And so, he did it again. And when he did it the second time, I'm just talking. That was years ago. I kicked his car. He stayed in, and then he eventually got and he was mad. And it was a little girl, and he hit her, and we defended her in self-defense, and the police came and stopped us and all of that. But my point is that I've been in that situation where somebody tried to run you over. So I know when they say that, we know what that means. I was just in Flint on the 1st of March, basically with the Armed Human Rights Movement. There was a young man named Rayvon Shaheed, 17 years old, on November 2nd, 2024. You can say he was stalked by 2 Michigan State troopers. It ultimately led to one of them shooting him 6 times in his back and 1 time in the back of his head. That's how they killed him. Ultimately, the AG said that she was not going to be pressing charges against them, and she gave what her opinion was. So my point is that those opinions could be changed. So we were there, and I was we were doing a march, and somebody tried to do the same thing. They drove their car, and then we had to handle the situation of circumstances. But my point is that a lot of times when it deals with weapons and the right, they're doing this to target people because they know that if you do laws based on these think tanks and these almost like black codes or targeted group laws, where if you have certain type of charges or background, you can't have a firearm. Right. So they get the firearm, and then so that's what that is. So it's like it's weaponized, but so that's what that is. But yeah, I know you asked a question. I guess I got very long-winded with the answer, but the point is that it is, when you go to those places to get firearms, gun stores, definitely retired police officers, sometimes active police officers or wannabe police officers, and yes, definitely a lot of them are the right-wing militia type, the MAGA people. The majority of them is that, and I'm going to tell you what's also insane a little bit. Even the ones who are not white and are black or Hispanic, they're the MAGA types too. Yeah. And so and it's like it's kind of really unfortunate, and I feel that it's just a lot of confusion that takes place too, how people understand the politics of it. But yeah, that's the answer to that, though. Yeah.
Today, where we are, like a lot of the police, with their skin color, it really doesn't matter because, I know it's a whole new world, man.
And their skin color and what they're projecting as their politics doesn't matter because I know people. We have certain communities like the Pan-African, Black nationalist, African-centered community. You got people with those names and backgrounds, and they're all MAGA out too. Yeah. But I do know this, though. I do know that Steve Bannon said that if they were able to carry out certain initiatives and agendas and disturb the black male vote, that they would be able to reign for 100 years, he said. He mentioned that. And I did see that happening, all these different propaganda tricks that, they talked about and all this other stuff. So I did see what was going on. And they're very clever at what they do. Very clever.
Steve Bannon was on a board of directors along with Michael Flynn of Cambridge Analytica. And they have access to all kinds of personal data and statistics and blackmail material to be used against us.
Wow.
Yeah. I would encourage the audience to go back and listen to the shows we did with Patrick Berge, who's an expert on that kind of computer data. And they have files on every member of Congress and House of Representatives, and they're using this. And even the jurors in the Trump trials. And they use this data and this information for blackmail purposes and to manipulate people. We said before the show we wanted this to be upbeat and encouraging, and that's it. But it's hard, man. It's hard.
But what's interesting too, Steve Bannon, when they asked him, they said, "Are you a white nationalist?" He says that he was an economic nationalist, aka economic white nationalist. But people don't even know what that means, and the problem with that is when you understand what he's saying, then there's an understanding on really what's going on. And what the understanding is the fact that you can't separate capitalism from slavery or oppression. It's impossible to do so. The whole entire experiment of capitalism was built and based on chattel slavery. And you can't call something a free market or free labor economy, whatever you want to call it free, but it was built off oppression. It's a contradiction. And so he understands that the ultimate level of oppression and the ultimate level of what they want to call white supremacy or white nationalism is capitalism, because of the fact of you can't separate the two. And so that's why he says, he's on the economic thing. And this is kind of why people like him thought it was a little cool to have Elon Musk come on board, because he's supposed to be, quote unquote, the world richest man, when he's really America's biggest, the term they like to use, welfare queen, and I say that to say this, when it comes to welfare, a lot of people are confused. Politics in America is all about that, whether you're conservative or liberal, and dealing with the Democrat or Republican Party, I'm going to say. We know that that's their fight, what the conservatives do, the conservative form of welfare, is quite different. It's like politics is a very confusing dynamic. The conservatives make it their duty, their welfare, is to assure tax breaks, subsidies, funding, and contracts to the ruling class. That's known as corporate welfare. While on the other dynamic, the Democrats and others, that agenda is to assure tax incentives, programs, and services for those in need, for low-income families, middle-class, and working-class people. So in that sense, it's understanding the difference. The sick part is that the red states are the majority of these particular government-type, welfare, public welfare. But what we noticed that, and it's a lot of the MAGA types, but the issue is that they don't mind the welfare. It's just the fact that they feel entitled to it, and they don't want nobody else to get it. And if they feel that anybody besides them is going to get it, they will, starve, have poor health, or whatever it takes to make sure that at least you're suffering. And that's the insanity, behind it all. But it was like what LBJ said. He said that, the lowest white man, Southerner, he said, will, support you, paraphrasing him, picking his pockets if it meant that the highest black man will have an issue or a problem. And that's the way that the oligarchs, that's the way that the bourgeoisie is able to have an advantage over the MAGA types, is, by that, because they use scapegoating, they use propaganda, they use fear. And, of course, that racism is just an extension of fascism. They use racism as a distraction, to control people. If they have you thinking that, you're different than the other person, then they could oppress you and them, and you support it. You support getting oppressed when the reality is that it's the same oppressor. The bourgeoisie is oppressing us all, and oligarchies are doing the same thing to us both. But the problem is that when you make people think that these so-called differences we have mean something, then you're able to oppress us thoroughly instead of us actually being allies together and fighting against the bourgeoisie and these oligarchs who don't care about any of us.
LBJ said you could abuse the poorest white man as long as he could look and see a poorer black man. There was a black man that was below him.
Yeah.
He's happy as a clam. He'd just be happy as a clam. Well, that guy's worse than me. Then what do you make, Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD, the head of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party .org? What do you make then? Because both the Democrats and the Republicans, they're both capitalists.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, but still, and I do it myself. I says, well, but the Democrats aren't as bad. Slap some sense into me, or should I slap some sense into you? Do you still sympathize with the Democrats because they're not as bad as these right-wing racist Republicans?
I'm gonna tell you my so this is from my analysis and take on the thing. So we know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. We know that, but we also know that when Dr. Martin Luther King, basically did his revolutionary actions, people don't understand that passive resistance is a form of guerrilla warfare. People don't understand that part, but it is, and it was very effective what he did. And he was able to, pressure and compel LBJ to deal with the Civil Rights Act of 64, the voters of 1965 and the 1968 Housing Act, and also different type of job. The whole entire idea of the war on poverty was influenced by Dr. King, which LBJ didn't get to fulfill. But when he did those particular actions, he said, I think we just lost the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, a.k.a. the South to the Republicans, and then Nixon came with the Southern strategy. The Southern strategy was that, you can't say the N-word anymore like that. You can't be direct about your racism. You have to use euphemisms and dysphemisms or dog whistle politics, right? And so that's what they're on now. Instead of saying, just say immigrant, just say housing, just say LGBTQIA, just say something else, but it's still the same group of people. And like Lee Atwater said, remember Lee Atwater in 1981 when he was talking to, members of the Republican Party, he was saying how to be a racist but not present yourself as such. He said, you started off in 1950 saying, and. He said, you can't do that no more. You got in problems in the 60s. He said, and it's getting so abstract now, like talking about housing and busing and all of that. But he was just saying that that's the way to go. Not to digress on your question, but I just wanted to give some background. So here's my thing. I always tell people that when you say Democrat and Republican, it's the same bird of the same capitalist system, the left-wing capitalism and the right-wing capitalism. So, so that's how it goes. So here's my opinion of both. The Democrats are foxes, they're foxes, and they come, as a fox, bearing gifts, though. They got gifts. Yeah. But we still know they're a fox. And since they got gifts and they want us to believe they're all for us, at least it gives us a little time. The Republicans, you should just be wolves and just show us, we'll eat you. But now with MAGA, they're like rabid wolves, and, with bloody jaws and all of that. So I would say that as a revolutionary and just looking at it from a warfare perspective, all I can say is that the Democrats at least gives us enough time to think, while MAGA just want to bite our head. We can't even breathe. So it's like, it's the same system. I don't think none is really ultimately at the end of it better than the other. But if I was fighting a battle, I at least, see an advantage in an enemy that got gifts that I could use, even though they want to kill me. As long as I know that's what they want to do, I could prepare a little better. But they both are capitalists, and they both have what it is. But I know that one of the greats said, the only good capitalist was a dead capitalist. That was Marx who said that. But at the same time, there are people who are, I think there's some people that are good people, and can be better, like Jasmine Crockett. I like her. And there's some others that I think are pretty decent people.
What about like Bernie and AOC?
Oh, I love Bernie, and and yeah, definitely do. And As far as my voting or my political, I've never did anything as a Democrat. I've always supported the Green Party. Even when Cynthia McKinney ran for president, I was right there with her, to the extent that, I secured her in Miami, I secured her in Palm Beach, and even went all the way to New York with her, So that's my position on it. A lot of people think that the only parties that exist is Democrat and Republican. They don't know that you got other parties that exist.
Yeah, I've only had Cynthia McKinney on the show a couple of times, but we for some reason she loves me. I love her for obvious reasons. For some reason she loves me, and she has.
But that's how I met John. I met John through her.
Oh, really?
In Washington, in Washington D.C. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
One of the questions you wanted to talk about is where is the party today, and what do you see as new tactics we could be using today? As I fear a lot of the old tactics haven't been working.
Well, see, here's the thing. I would say that it wasn't so much that our previous tactics were unsuccessful. I would say that some things that we didn't know what was going on. We didn't understand the level of COINTELPRO. We didn't understand the level of MH Chaos and Operation Garden Plot and these programs and propaganda and different levels of warfare that was aimed against us. It was so unfair because it's one thing when you fight an enemy and all they're going to do is shoot you. You shoot them. But it's another thing when you fight an enemy and they're using mind control, psychological warfare, chemical warfare, psychochemical warfare, social engineering, even going after your family members and breaking up families and all y'all, friends and all that stuff is so it was most of that really destroyed us, not so much our tactics, but mostly how we responded to the different warfares. It was easy to pick up the firearm and defend ourselves, but it was not easy to deal with that. So where we are today, our political education is very strong, where, we have it to a certain level where, it makes us stronger in combating the different levels of propaganda, psychological warfare, social engineering. COINTELPRO is not foolproof, but it definitely is better where we're able to see those things a mile away and gives us a better vantage point. So I think that was most of our problems and issues was so much the propaganda and the warfare than it was just being our political position. Our political position was always strong, being socialist, scientific socialist. We still are that. As far as the tactics now, I would say this, I feel that when it comes to, it was always a dialectic debate about which direction was the proper way, because it is true that many felt that dealing with, needs of the people was considered some weaker thing and all of that, and that we should have just been taking up arms and going to the street. But a true revolutionary knows that that's not revolutionary, that's reactionary. And but the point as far as tactics are concerned. So I would say that MAGA has really tried to turn the clock of time back to the 50s and 60s. They're trying to go all the way back to the plantation, to be honest with you. But those tactics that I'm going to say outside the party, like what Dr. King did and what Malcolm spoke of and what others did, and then when we did formulate the party, what we originally did, they don't go away because we're dealing with the same issue. It's not about what we do, it's about how we do it. So where we are right now in our tactics with the Armed People's Movement, what birthed us and our need in the 60s was, the oppression that we had. And the Civil Rights Movement at that time is really what gave us the birth and the emphasis that we needed. And those battles were fought, in so many different ways. There was a debate on whether, Dr. King should have been armed and, was it sensible to get, dogs, sick on you and to get, beaten and all that other stuff. but he got things done. But here's the point. I believe where we are right now, the work that Dr. King did was very good. The stuff that others talked about that criticized was also important. So where we are right now is that since we're fighting MAGA, and MAGA has carried things back that far, then our tactics must be up to par as well. And so with that particular dynamic, so here's my thing. So we stand on, even like with this whole thing with the DEI dynamics and all these other different things that, they call this stuff going after and all this other stuff. We stand on the mantle of, passive resistance but armed, meaning that the people who do those tactics, of course, amongst us aren't the armed people, but those of us protecting and observing are, meaning that if somebody's doing a passive resistant act like shutting down a road or shutting down a building or doing something, and let's say, an agent of the state comes in to try to detain or arrest them, you're not going to beat them up. You're not going to stick any dogs on them. You're not going to spray them down with water hoses or disrespect them. You will do it at least humanely. And, that's the position of being armed, or if you just try to violate us and just be reckless, then we will defend ourselves with these arms. If you put our lives in imminent threat or danger in a criminal way just because you have a badge doesn't mean you can do that, then we will use armed self-defense against the person who puts our life in imminent threat or danger. So as far as where we are today, it's just dealing with the current dynamic. MAGA is a serious thing. MAGA is what? MAGA is the accumulation of all the radical right-wing groups, on the I'm going to say the street surface level, the Ku Klux Klan, the neo-Nazis, and, and the nationalists, and even the religious right and all of that. They're united. And then there's segments in law enforcement, Back to Blue, Blue Lives Matter, all the other stuff. And then they got the executive branch, the judicial branch, the legislative branch,
Supreme Court.
Yeah, the courts. And then lastly, the so-called richest man in the world. And with them, they always straddled that situation where, that top group of the nationalists, they never really liked the elite group. They never really liked them, per se, even though some of them financed them behind the scenes. But this is the first time where they act like they support Elon Musk, but it's getting crazy in the middle anyways. But as far as tactics, we have modernity, but we understand the value and what we're up against, and there's a way to update that, but be tactful with it, while at the same time making sure that people are fed, clothed, sheltered, trained, and defended, because that's what's important.
Who do you see as leadership that we can look up to today? I've had Alan Woods on the show, socialist economist. I've had Dr. Richard Wolff on the show, another incredible socialist economist. But who do you see as leadership to lead us on all levels, from the street to the economic classroom?
That is a very that's a on-the-spot complex question. I would say that some of the names that you mentioned are impactful. I would say that but he's not trying to run for any leadership anymore. Bernie Sanders definitely would have been somebody who would be in that position. So right now, I don't see anybody in the political spectrum. I don't, and I'm gonna just be frank with you. I don't know what people saw, and I know some people would be upset with me getting ready to say this. Back then I didn't see Obama. Like I said, I was with Timothy McKinney. People just see people, and they see their energy, but they don't see their politics.
Oh no, Obama was CIA. Obama came out of CIA. There's no doubt in my mind. Business International, he was CIA from start to finish.
And he came in and did worse things than you could ever imagine. I mean, he was doing things that I think they haven't caught up to.
Yeah.
Like, he was actually waging wars with drones and wasn't calling it wars. It was just called, that's a strike. No, that's a war, buddy. Yeah. If you send a damn drone, a darn drone to some people's nation, and you're dropping, bombs on them and you're killing their leaders and all, that's not, a strike. That's war. So he was doing wars, unmanned wars with, these robotic planes or drones. Yeah, that's what he was known.
Yeah, let's ignore it. Let's not waste time on Obama.
Yeah.
But I mean, you talk about Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
and his tactics, but he wound up dead. They shot him dead, and they killed his mother. They killed his mother too. That no one talks about.
Right.
When I come up from the Lower East Side. I came up through the Yippies and the lower leftist, and I'm sure other names we don't want to mention, but down in those days, back in the 70s and the 80s, and when I read the Handbook of Guerrilla Warfare by Che Guevara, he said that we capture the weapons of our enemies in guerrilla warfare, and then we use those weapons against them. And I says, hey, I'm gonna get into radio. I'm gonna capture the media, the marketplace, and use that as my leverage. But then what do we have now? Joe Rogan. What do we got? Who came in out of nowhere? These people came in out of nowhere, man. With no funding. Some of them, I'm imitating me. We were talking about them yesterday.
Yeah.
What do we do? And then we look back, and we look back at this article by John Potash where he interviewed. We didn't get to talk about it at all, but we'll have it come back.
Yeah.
This great article about how the COINTELPRO went after rappers and activists. And it mentions Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton, one of the most brilliant men that either of us could get. Brilliant. The man was 19 years old. And if they had not shot him down dead today, Governor, Senator Hampton, who knows, President Hampton, brilliant man.
Right.
So, if they're shooting us, if they're taking away our efforts, stifling all of our efforts, and shooting down our greatest heroes, what do we do?
Well, see, it's like, as a revolutionary, if we're on the battlefield and our comrades, are killed, we just pick their weapons up and we still fight. They can, Chairman Fred said, rest in peace, rest in power. He said that you can kill, the revolutionary, the freedom fighter, but you can't kill the revolution. You can't do that. So we carry on. And I'll say this, as far as Dr. King, like, for example, why did they need to do it so bad? Dr. King had talked about, he said, he actually realized that he ended up having the people go into, paraphrase, into a burning house with his efforts. And this is what he meant. He said that what good was it to integrate lunch counters and hotel rooms and, in department stores when we couldn't afford it? He said, how you going to tell a man to pick himself up by the bootstraps so he didn't even have any boots? He said, so he realized that it was about economic injustice and about fighting that and about, coming up with a second Bill of Rights where this government would have to have given $12 billion to deal with this second bill, something that that FDR was trying to do, too, with the second Bill of Rights. And so he talked about that, and that they were going to Washington to occupy it and carry that out, and then he was killed after that, because he went to a different level. Same thing with Malcolm X. And Malcolm X said, don't worry about trying to fight these cases in America. He said, don't bring some police in Georgia for your injustice. He said the government's responsible. He said, but the U.S. government courts is not qualified to hear our cases. We have to carry our case before the world. He says it's not a civil rights issue. He says it's a human rights issue. And he was killed after he said that. And so it's like, they, and like you said, Chairman Fred, what was the threat of him? Because he was uniting. They always want us to be, and I stand on, this is very important for us both, me and you both, and for the movement, for all of the actual politically educated, not to throw race term on it, but white socialists who are out there, and black socialists and black communists and white communists. For those of us who understand what the problem is, that the problem is the bourgeoisie and these oligarchs, that it's not no race thing in this level. We understand what the real issue is. Here's the deep thing of what they fear. He organized everybody. He organized black people, white people, Hispanic people, everybody, and it was called the Rainbow Coalition. They feared that. See, in being, in the black community, myself, being in the background of Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism, and being exposed to all of that on those levels, we have some issues amongst ourselves where, and it's how would I say, it's not unjust, but I'm going to say it's premature and immature until we reach a level of maturity. And that is, some of us actually hate all white people. And this is true. I'm not speaking that's something that's not true. Some of us actually hate all white people. We don't want to have any white comrades or allies because of slavery and racism and white supremacy. And it blinds us, right? Some of us are blinded by that, right? And so it's like, and I call it a level of immaturity and a level of, where we need to grow, develop, and evolve, right? But I'm just going to say this. The system wants that. When you go to the COINTEL profiles, okay, the first file talks about fear of a black messiah who will organize the movement and bring everybody together, right? And the black National Pan community, this is what we talk about. We talk about that. Yeah, they target us fair. That's why Dr. King gone. That's why Chairman Frey. That's where this one going, right? But we don't talk about that other member that says to make sure that whites who support the movement, that they don't support the movement, and that blacks who may have positions that aren't in the community, to make sure that they don't. So COINTELPRO understood this level and this dynamic. What made the George Floyd protest different than any other protest we had? Because we had Ferguson, we had L.A., we had so many different rebellions, I'm going to say, uprisings we've had, right? What made George Floyd make them make certain actions? Because during the George Floyd uprising, it wasn't just black people.
The white soccer moms.
People. Yeah, white soccer moms. Everybody was out. And so that changed it, because that's the fear. The fear is the people. So I always say, I have a book out called African-Centered Marxism, right? And here's the thing. And I say that because of this thing, okay? So, Chairman Mao, who was one of the best Marxists who lived in his day and time, he was able to come up with a theory of Marxism that met the day and time, but it had a ethnic encouragement and empowerment with it, where we had the Little Red Book. So with African-centered Marxism, it's the same thing, that, we understand the proletariat struggle and we're fully engaged. But we also understand that there's some racism within the society, so it does have a identity attached to it, but not in any far-out way. So I coined that as a low-end revolution. But the higher end of revolution is not a black revolution, it's not a women's revolution, it's not an LGBTQIA revolution, it's the people's revolution. We're able to put all that other stuff aside and we organize as the people. And so that's what they fear. They fear the people because the people have power. So to all those MAGA people who are being influenced and manipulated by racism and white supremacy and fear mongering, if they truly understood that the people who manipulate them fear them because they are the people, and that if they could put all of that ignorance down and understand that it's about the people at the end of the day, we could all actually unite and have a real people's revolution and overthrow the oligarchy and overthrow the bourgeoisie. But the problem is that the propaganda is so thick, and like you said about going like with the radio and now what do we have? Here's the problem. At first, social media seemed very good because it was a independent thing. But see, when you have certain type of controlling arms over things, here's what it is. So, they use entertainment as they can weaponize it against people, and they have. And so that's what they do now with social media. They can create these algorithms and and just divide and conquer the people. What it took an FBI agent or unit to do in months or a few years, all it takes is one social media post, a YouTube video, IG post, or Facebook or Twitter, wherever you're X, and you could dismantle or spread that propaganda in 5 minutes, where it would take years and months to do it. So that becomes the downside to it.
Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD, I don't know if you believe in God's perfect timing. Okay, but I've become convinced, because we are just exactly out of time. And from the moment you said that when your comrade is shot down to pick up his weapon, and from that point on, we've been counting down the clock. Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD. Now, you could find our friend here. He's the head of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party.org. We met him through CIA Drugs R Us, John Potash, so keep that in mind. You could find him on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD. If you just Google Ali Muhammad, MD, pops right up. Ali O. Muhammad.
Ali with two L's in the I. ALLI, that's Alpha Lima Lima India, ALLI. Last name MUHAMMAD. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. And you meet him in Oakland, California, the second week of April 2025. MAGA and Oligarchy Against the People at Merritt College. If you go there and see him, give him a big hug for me, please. And that's about it. I think that's it for all of our plugs, my friend. But you have an open invitation to come back anytime. And I'd love to have you come back and discuss what the appointment was about.
It's okay. We created a new life with this. We have, but again, to the people, yes, you can reach me on Facebook at Ali, ALLI, middle name O, last name Muhammad, MUHAMMAD. That's Ali O Muhammad. That's on Facebook. And the same thing on Instagram. And on X, a.k.a. Twitter, you can reach me, Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD. And if you need to reach me any other way, it's Dr. MUHAMMAD, and of course the MD at the end for medical. So thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate you. I appreciate the listening audience, and I'm ready to be on next time we can discuss the topic. But I think that this was fruitful because it was very fruitful.
Left on such an uplifting note, man. I can't thank you enough. Okay, because it could have been a downer. It could have been a downer. Yeah. But you lifted us up. Okay, my friend, Dr. Ali Muhammad, MD, on YouTube too as well. You can find him on YouTube. Thank you so much, sir. Good night.
Good night. All power to the people.
God bless.